Welcome to Predictions. This is a podcast where we talk about the future. My name is Konstantin Schubert and I'm here with
Ingmar Schubert.
Yeah, and we happen to have the same last name, but we're not married, and it's not a coincidence, so I will leave that out to the listener to figure out. As you can hear, we are from Berlin, and today we'll be talking about the future of self-driving cars and where we think autonomous driving will go. There was a very interesting commentary in the last week made by the Volkswagen executive, and he said that he thinks that self-driving cars are one of the hardest problems we have. It's like going to Mars, and he's not sure if it will ever happen that we will have level 5 autonomy, but level 4 he thinks is realistic. I think maybe for the listeners, Ingmar, do you want to quickly describe what's the difference between level 4 and level 5?
I'm actually not sure. I think level 5 means that you're actually not even able to interfere with the car anymore, and level 4 means that most of the time you don't, and you don't have to, but the car is designed in a way that it is still possible, and it's also necessary at times.
Yeah, I think the catch is that with level 5, the idea is that you can go anywhere with fully self-driving capability. There's no need for a steering wheel, and with level 4, you still have a steering wheel because sometimes you have to drive yourself, but you're not required to pay attention. The car will make sure you get enough time to take over, and the car can drive completely autonomously for certain stretches of road.
Yeah.
So basically, the idea being that, okay, the car can drive on the highway, and it leaves the highway ramp and drops you off, and then you can take over. I think that's my understanding, but maybe we should check that.
Yeah, maybe to give an example, I think what Waymo does is widely considered to be level 5 self-driving, at least within the area they're offering it. And level 5 doesn't exist. So level 5 would mean that this is a completely new kind of car that doesn't have a steering wheel. And
so you mean Waymo is doing level 4?
Yeah,
you mean?
Yeah.
But they do have cars now without safety drivers.
Sure, but
have you heard about that?
But they can still interfere remotely, and I think this is considered level 4.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
But actually, what you just said is quite interesting, because this is, of course, in stark contrast to, for example, Elon Musk, who said at the beginning of 2019 that he's expecting widespread level 5 by the end of 2019. Which,
I think he says he wants to have 1 million self-driving taxis on the road by like this month or something.
Yeah, exactly. So we can confirm that this hasn't happened. So there's at least
you have 10 days left, or?
Yeah. I mean, there's at least some discrepancy between different people.
Yeah, there's some disagreement, and I think it's interesting because basically it was blown up as like, oh yeah, like car executive first time admits that we're not actually there. And I think there is a big divide between people who think it's going to happen and people who think it's not going to happen. I think that's the topic we want to talk about today, where we see it in 5 years, where we see it in 10 years and 30 years. Hopefully we'll find something to disagree on. And then when we did that, we can also talk about the implications of that, right? Like, what does it mean for our cities? What does it mean for our lives? But I think the very raw, tough problem of getting a self-driving car on the road, how far do you think we are away? Do you agree with the Volkswagen guy? Or do you think he's too pessimistic? Are you more Elon kind?
I'm not so sure. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, obviously, Elon Musk is wrong with his timelines, but I also think that this is not, I mean, level 5 is not something that's going to happen within the next 10 years or so. I think that's for sure. Everything, I mean, to give a more precise answer, that's of course hypothesizing, but I mean, I would expect probably widespread of level 5 cars by the end of 2030 or maybe the beginning of 2030, but I don't think that this will go to the consumers everywhere, but it will mostly be used by taxi companies. So I think we will see more of what Waymo does until 2030.
So basically level 4.
Yeah.
Level 4.
So during the next 10 years, I think what Waymo does will expand and maybe become more common also in other parts of the world. But I don't think there's going to happen anything close to level 5 within the next 10 years.
Okay, so you think there's going to be way more of level 4?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Exactly.
So basically you agree with the Volkswagen guy that there is no level 5 coming.
Well, I'm not sure what he actually said. Did he say that this is never gonna happen, or?
Yeah, so no, he said it's like landing on the moon, like I don't know, landing on Mars. Sorry, like landing.
Yeah.
Landing on the moon also never happened. No, I'm joking. But landing on a Mars, he said, it's like it's very far away. You don't know how hard it actually is. Actually, I think it's harder than landing on Mars, because with the landing on Mars, you kind of know, like you have these known unknowns, and with level 5 autonomy, you have these unknown unknowns, that kind of things.
Yeah, actually,
you don't even know you're gonna hit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I expect the landing on Mars to be not so far away than level 5. So, but
yeah.
Let's leave this for another episode.
But I think it's also. I mean, we can talk more precisely about why we think level 5 is so far away and level 4 is closer. And we can also think, because actually, and personally, I'm even a bit skeptical that level 4 will really roll out very far. Or I say I'm ambivalent, but I think the question that I'm having is like, how does it really matter? Like level 5, like like if I have a car that's level 4 and it can drive me through the commute, it can drive me through the highways, it can drive me through most of the cities. But there may be some situations where, I don't know, there's a construction zone, it pulls up to the right side and I have to take over. Like, does it really matter? I mean, it matters in terms of who can drive a car, right? Like, I mean, if you have full level 5 autonomy, then you will have people who are like children or people who are blind or something, they can start using cars. As long as you can drive a car, as most adults nowadays can, it doesn't really matter that much.
I think
you get a small steering wheel, and
yeah. I mean, I think the difference is really in how you can use the time of your commute. So in level 5, you can actually use it as productive time, or maybe sleep if you drive overnight. And I think this is a step up, which also. I mean, plays a big role, right? So this is why people, like in Europe at least, prefer to train over a flight oftentimes, just because they can use the time productively. I think.
Well, I mean, night trains. The trains. Yeah, I thought you were talking about night trains because
not that much.
They're not that popular. Let's be fair, even in Europe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think it's almost a technicality, the difference between level 5 and level 4. I mean, as long as you define level 4 as something, okay, there is this huge area where you can drive autonomously, but there are some areas where you can't, and like, what does it even matter? Like, if I don't go there, like Phoenix, Arizona, where Waymo is going, is it level 4 or is it level 5? I would say let's maybe, because I also checked the definition just now on the side. Let's try to be more precise and say level 4 is something where you can rely on the car, but anytime it may be that the car pulls over safely, stops, and says, okay, guy, now's your turn. So you don't really have any areas where you can rely on the car being autonomous. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, you can't say, okay, I have a level 4 car, but it can go down any highway, self-driving. That's not really level 4, that's already almost level 5 for that area. Level 4 means you're in a car, you're going down the highway, but it may decide to pull over safely, I don't know, to go into a parking lot and be like, okay, guy, now it's your turn. Yeah. And I think with level 5, you have to guarantee that this doesn't happen. And so if you look at it like this, then it kind of matters, right? Then, okay, like level 4, you need to be an able driver, somebody with a license, so you can take over. You can sleep, but it may wake you up. Level 5, anyone can drive. Everyone gets a car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it matters. And the question is,
I think
why do you?
I wouldn't underestimate how many people can actually drive cars, and then of course it also gets easier to do so. I think what really is the difference, I mean, what really makes a difference, not so much how many people can drive the cars, because anyways, I mean, it's 90% of the population who can drive cars anyway. But I think what it really comes down to is how those that can drive a car can use the time in their car. And I mean, if I can really
Yeah.
like sit down on the desk and work and don't have to worry about the street, I think this is a significant
But that's
step
already
up.
level 4. You already get that with
I
level
mean,
4.
not really.
Like,
I mean,
you can work and it...
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on how level 4 your car is, right?
No, but that's I checked it. I checked it. I'm sure that's a definition. Like it says, it will pull over safely.
Sure.
It gives you enough
But
time
it's a
to
question
switch over
how
into
often,
driving
right?
mode.
If that happens like every 5 minutes, then you can't really work. If it's something that happens,
Yeah, that's
twice a year or so, then it doesn't
Yeah,
make
but
a
I think
difference.
we're talking
agree.
about edge cases. I mean, I think there I'm pretty sure it's gonna be rare because we're talking about edge cases here, right? It's not like, oh yeah, this car cannot pass autonomously under bridges.
Sure.
So every bridge it has to. So you're talking about these cases where the car is like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Sure, but
And
of course, I mean the space of configurations the car has to decide in is huge. So there's a lot of edges, right? And so I mean, in 20,000 dimensions, you have a lot of edges, and I don't know. I mean, it really depends on how well developed this is. I would agree that if you have a well developed level 4 car that kind of wakes you up once a week or so, this is something that you don't. I mean. Then you're basically at level 5.
But also that again makes it pointless because if I have a car that's level 4, it can go almost anywhere except once a week. It has to wake me up. Well, then you can probably get a remote operator into the car.
Yeah.
So you go from level 4 to level 5 by basically having a guy in the center.
Yeah, that's actually quite
and
interesting.
ride the car. So what exactly Waymo is doing, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Maybe you could actually
then
imagine that as a service, right? So you could like rent people to intervene in case your car has a problem.
Yeah, you could put them in the driver's seat. Actually, you could have them just do it all the time. Yeah, that would be Uber.
No, I mean more like a subscription service.
Yes. No.
Where you pay like, I don't know, €5 every time your car has a problem, right?
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Oh, you mean with Fiverr? Did you get a guy on Fiverr? Is that where you're going?
Yeah. So
I
it calls
thought
somebody
we were
up and somebody has to decide remotely what to do. And then every time that happens, you have to pay a fee. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Okay, so we basically figure out that level 4 and level 5 don't matter or are less of a difference as long as level 4 is like sufficiently good enough.
Yeah.
And good, it's good enough. How close are we really to level 4? I mean, on the one hand, there's Waymo doing their laps in Phoenix, Arizona. Do you think that will be something that just rolls out, let's say, statewide, or let's say nationwide in the United States, or comes to Europe, or to certain cities in Europe within the next 5 years? Or do you think, because there is the other thing that can happen is that in 10 years, we're still talking about, oh yeah, you remember this one time Waymo did this in Arizona, Phoenix, and then they discovered it's too expensive, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Discovered too many problems, people didn't like it, and that was the end of it. Do you think this will just fizzle out? Or do you think we're actually at the beginning of the revolution?
I think what you just said there is really important. It's a question whether this is scalable in terms of costs. And when you talk about this, you have to talk about like this classical fight between using LiDAR and using optical systems for autonomous driving.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't see the very tech-heavy approach from Waymo scaling so fast, at least. I mean, I'm not sure if you can really do so much about the price of a LiDAR system and all that. And I think if it stays, I mean, if this is, so to speak, if this remains the state of the art of autonomous driving, and if the like optically guided autonomous driving that Elon Musk tries to do doesn't succeed so fast, at least, then I don't think that this is something that you will privately own. I think
because it's going to be too expensive.
Yeah. I think this is then something that Uber and Waymo and maybe some big taxi companies will do. But I don't think that this is something that will be so widespread that everybody can own a level 4 car. Yeah. So I think it really comes down on what the technical basis of the autonomous driving will be. That's
an interesting, actually, this whole ownership topic where people are like, oh yeah, autonomous cars mean that nobody will own a car anymore. Everybody will just take a taxi. I don't really believe it. I think
Really?
people like to fart into their seats, and they would like to have their phone in the car, or not their phone, but their stuff in the car, and they like to have, the smell of their car. Like home is where you don't smell it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if people really want to do ride sharing all the time. But I guess
maybe it will be
if ride sharing.
Sorry, I think maybe it will be more like renting an apartment today and buying one. So
Maybe.
so owning a car will be more like an asset.
Or maybe maybe. I mean, you'd have to replace the car. Anyways, because cars break down, but you could reuse the LiDAR sensors, all the expensive stuff,
Sure,
right?
and-
That stuff
and
has
of-
maybe a longer lifetime.
Yeah, and if you own one, you can rent it out. So I think owning a car will be more like an asset, and some people will decide to own one, and some people will decide to rent it.
Yeah, I mean, if the price of taxis, let's not call them ride sharing, let's call them taxis, Uber or whatever. If they comes down like 50%, of course, then I know I will be tempted just to take a taxi instead of being like, oh, should I buy a car? And especially if there's not a taxi driver, you have the privacy
Yeah.
in the car, and I think that's a big winner, because the one
for me at
maybe
least.
I'm weird because people always laugh about it when I say it, but the one thing I hate about taking a taxi is that you have to talk to the guy. And maybe people like that, but I think subconsciously a lot of people don't actually like that. They want to go into the car, they want to have to commute, have their own music, and not have to talk to people. And I think that's actually a strong argument, that when you say, okay, you have autonomous cars on the roads, and maybe there's sometimes an operator having to guide them, but only temporarily. And then the person would be remote, so there's nobody in the car. You have it for yourself, and it's half the price of an Uber today. People will probably take it, and I guess that then it's not a problem if the car is like 100k, 150k in terms of buying it, because Uber or other companies can afford that, and it will pay for itself over its lifetime, and you can reuse the sensors. Maybe I don't know what's the lifetime on a LiDAR sensor. Do you know that?
I'm not sure. No, but
actually, coming back to the previous topic, I think LiDAR is coming down in cost. You have to distinguish between I think there are the traditional LiDAR sensors, which have like these rotating lasers and which are I don't know what technology based they are, and then you have these solid state LiDARs, which are not rotating. They're very small, and they just look into one direction. They also have lower resolution, basically like a radar, but with the advantage of LiDAR, which is, with LiDAR, you can, I believe, what's the advantage of LiDAR? It's higher resolution, right?
yeah, and also you have
radar.
like you have direct depth picture, so you don't have to synthesize that from, I don't know.
And yes, and with LiDAR you can
structure
see
from motion or something.
non-moving objects. And I think with radar you only see moving objects for some reason, because it uses some kind of Doppler. I don't know.
That could
I just read
I'm
that.
not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. So, I mean, whatever happens, I think there are two scenarios. There's this one scenario where the hardware remains so expensive.
Yeah.
I mean that you basically can't own a car without using it as an asset. So it will be too expensive to just have it for yourself. And I mean, yeah, from today's standpoint, this of course seems a little bit more realistic, because you don't have to make so many assumptions, right? You don't have to assume that LiDAR becomes more, less expensive, or you don't have to assume that autonomous driving just using cameras and radar sensors is going to be solved. And yeah, in this case, I would agree that we will see large ride-sharing companies using self-driving cars, and maybe some private people who then use it as an asset. So like you buy an apartment today. But for the other scenario, where the prices really come down, if it's due to, cheaper LiDAR software, or because, really the software hardware, or really the software side of the problem is solved, so you can just use cameras, then, I could imagine, I would agree with you that people will still own cars. And if that happens during the next 10 years, I think it won't be too long until everybody owns an autonomous car.
I don't know. maybe, but maybe some people just don't want it because they say, I like driving. I'm the best driver in the world. So I think there will also be at some point a question, and I think it will come up actually earlier than level 4 is like, do we make things mandatory? And I know that the European Union is already making mandatory some safety features.
Yeah, took only...
I know about...
Yeah.
I shared the article with you. I think it is about automatic braking assistance and yeah, I think that's about it already. And there's like this mirror warners like that blink when you like something is in your dead zone. But so I think that's really what will drive adoption for the mass market, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, people still drive stick because it's €1,000 cheaper to buy a car with stick than with an automatic transmission, and everybody drives stick, and everybody's like, yeah, but this is better. And maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it's definitely. I think if people are willing to go this length and like drive stick, I mean, I don't know. I personally just don't like it. And to go this length for maybe €1,000 and some theoretical fuel savings, I think the real reason why people do it is because it's if you can do it well, it's more fun to drive, right? So people like to drive because it's fun. Are people going to pay 15K, 20K, even for like a cheap LiDAR system in their car so they can go into fully autonomous mode?
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know. Maybe in luxury settings, like where like the CEOs drive and then whatever. But if you're like the guy who just gets a car and wants to go to his work and have some fun, I don't think people are going to bother with self-driving unless it really comes down in price. So it's going to be like, oh yeah, and by the way, you have this like automatic cruise control, and you have heated seats, and you have I don't know, windshield wipers that turn on when the rain comes, and yeah, and it's autonomous. So if it's on that level, yeah, then people will adopt it. But before that, I don't think people will actually opt for that in a big way.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think you kind of have to sneak it into people's cars just via some types of assistants that get more sophisticated over time. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's actually really interesting because this is what, for example, Bosch does right now. So they're talking a lot about autonomous driving, but so if you talk to people, what they're actually doing is like dashboard assistance and all that stuff, right? Yeah. And I think
is it really called Death Sport?
Yeah, I just googled it, and I think it really makes much more sense. And yeah, I mean it's also because if you would shoot for level 4 autonomous driving directly, you can't get any incentives on the way there. So this is not something that our economy likes so much, right? Investing into stuff that pays off in 15 years. And
well, Google does.
Yeah, Google does, of course, but I wouldn't really count this as an economy anymore. So, I mean, I could imagine self-driving cars that are a little bit like fly-by-wire in planes today, right? So where the pilot gives a basic input where he wants to go, but what actually happens to the flaps and so on is not under his control.
I mean, you already have that, right? You have traction control in cars, and you have
ESP,
ABS, or like all these things.
Yeah.
So this is there. But I was thinking about. I mean, the one thing when you talk about the future is like we as technologists, we always think about the technical part of it, but there's also the cultural part, right? And it's super hard to predict. Maybe self-driving will become cool, like, and everybody like wants to have like a self-driving car, and everybody's gonna spend the $6K to get it. If you look at Tesla fans nowadays, of course, everybody spends the $6K for the autopilot because it's just this kind of demographic that thinks an autopilot is a cool thing. I don't know. Maybe this becomes widespread in the population, and everybody wants to show off with that. Maybe, I don't know, you get a sticker on your windshield, so other people can see they have that. You know, I'm not kidding. I heard the story. You know these little sensors that you use for parking? Mm-hmm. These little ultrasound sensors that yeah, those. It's actually possible nowadays to make them in a way you don't see them. Like, there's no need to have this little black ring, but people still put them because it's now a sign of status, and the car manufacturers figure out that if you put these, make them visible, you can pay. You can sell the car for more expensive. People want this to be visible, this technology, because they want their neighbor to know that they have these beepers. I mean, I
Wow.
think at some point they will stop caring because this technology is becoming more and more commoditized. But in the past, it was like that. Yeah. So I think what you touched on, this thing with, okay, how are we gonna go to autonomy? Are we gonna go there immediately? Just go for level 5 or level 4 straight away, or are we gonna go step by step? Adaptive cruise control with a lane keeping assist, and then you have a lane change assist, and then you have this and this and this and this, and then bam, and before you know, you're autonomous, right? And I think that especially the German manufacturers are really going on for the second gradual approach. And I think what I've heard from Waymo in the past is that they said, yeah, we tried that, but the problem is that people stop paying attention to the car when you have this gradual approach. When you have too much adaptive cruise control and lane keeping, they are like, okay, well, let's drive. So I close my eyes, and then, but these are just assistants, right? They don't give a guarantee that they actually will be safe to a high enough availability, and so people become complacent. There are more accidents than before, and then people will start hating the technology, and it will actually harm the technology. And I think what Google says is that they went very consciously, didn't go for that, but they went for the full autonomy immediately, because they said this is an uncanny valley which will kill the technology. And I think they have a point. I'm not sure if I agree, because I think in terms of economics, like you said, right, you cannot make money from it until it's all there. But until it's all there, you don't know how long this road is, you don't know how expensive it is, so you need to go gradually. I see that point. But I also see the point, the damage that's done, that something does like autopilot by Tesla, where Musk goes and says, oh yeah, we have autopilot, and he says, yeah, but of course you have to keep your eyes on the road. But everybody's like, yeah, Elon, right? Wink, 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 yeah. and then they don't keep their eyes on the road. and I think that's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't help that he is posting Pornhub videos on his Twitter where people have sex while the autopilot is on. So.
Did he do that?
Yeah, I think
Today or what? I haven't checked his Twitter.
Maybe I'm mixing something up, but yeah. Yeah, it's really kind of weird that, I mean, the Tesla community is treating autopilot like it's an autopilot, but of course it is not.
And then of course if you tell them, oh no, but you have to pay attention, they say, of course you have to pay attention. Or every time there's an accident, they're like, yeah, but of course you have to pay attention, of course. And then they don't pay attention. So it's a bit hypocritical, I think. And at the same time, I like it. I think what Tesla is doing is like saying, okay, this is a messy problem. We just have cameras. We don't really know what's going on. Waymo has very strict rule-based systems. They don't use much ML. They use some machine learning for recognition, but then they have rule-based system. Tesla basically is like, okay, just plug everything into this thing, in this chip, and whatever comes out on the other side, we'll do it. And if it goes right most of the time, it's fine. If it doesn't go right, I should have paid attention, right?
Yeah, really imagine it as a huge deep neural network where you just have like the control output.
No, that's not my point. I'm sure Tesla is having a very nice deep neural network, whatever, and also they have multiple networks, of course.
Sure.
There's an interesting talk recently how they actually have to synthesize the outputs of these different neural networks, some convolutional networks for image recognition, other recurring neural networks for like the driving behavior and stuff, and they have to then bring it all together in another network and then get the output for the driving out of it. And I think I don't think that they're as ruthless and as cowboy as I just made it sound, but I definitely think they take a different approach. I think Waymo is like, all right, we gotta get it right. We have to make sure, we have to read the rules of the traffic. And here it says you have to keep 2 meter distance, so we keep 2 meter distance. And Tesla is like, I don't know, we just look at what people do and we just try to wing it. And I actually think there is a value to Tesla's approach, because I think there is one big lie which we tell ourselves about traffic rules, is that they make sense, and they don't make sense. There are many traffic rules which are followed by nobody. For example, when people take over each other, the distance they have to keep, or taking over on the right side when in slow traffic, things like these. Nobody follows them, but they are in the rule books. And if you actually drove like that, you wouldn't be able to actually drive. And I think Waymo is having problems with that. Their cars are very hesitant. And I think they already accepted that and built some things where they also have some kind of winging it attitude in their algorithms. But what I'm trying to say is that the problem why self-driving cars are so hard, I think, is because driving is not a well-defined problem. It's not something where you have like an equation, like a differential equation, and you solve it and you know how you have to drive. But it's a fuzzy thing, and like you should take over a car, you should have at least 1 meter of distance. But if there's another car coming, maybe not. Like sometimes you keep more distance, and sometimes you keep less distance when you take over. And of course, when you have less distance, then when you overtake, then it's a bigger risk, but you accept that. You sometimes have this bigger risk because, well, what you're going to do? There's another guy coming from the other side. And I think driving is messy like that, and I think that makes it also very hard for some people to learn, actually, because they're like, okay, but what am I supposed to do now? And I think that makes the computational problem so hard, because you can't just like write all the traffic rules into an algorithm and be like, okay, you do that.
Yeah.
And okay, I recognize all the cars and now I follow the rules. No, you recognize all the cars and you kind of follow the rules most of the time somehow.
Yeah.
And I think that makes the problem very hard. It makes it very hard to know even how hard it is. And I'm not sure how far we are from level 4.
Yeah. I mean, to your point with Waymo, like promoting this big leap directly to full autonomy, I'm not actually sure if it's completely like, if it's in the nature of the transition that it has to become more dangerous on the way there, because obviously what you can also do is implement assistants that just punish you for not paying attention, right? I mean, I don't think, yeah, of course, I mean, just a giant hand that just slaps you every time you
I saw a robot that does that.
I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think this is unsolvable. I think they certainly have a point that there's this kind of valley you have to go through until it becomes more secure again. But I think this is only if you, I mean, I'm trying to say you can certainly take measures to make this valley less dangerous, to the point where it's not dangerous anymore. And on the other hand, it's also like it's not a surprise that Waymo is trying to do this big leap and Tesla is not, because what Waymo has is the money, so just the capital, right? And what Tesla has is the data. So
and nothing to lose.
Yeah, I mean what Tesla has to use is their abundant data, so they have to try to gradually move from that and refine their network and train it from user input. And this is their giant asset, and they have to go this route because they couldn't do what Waymo does. Because they don't have Alphabet just pumping money into them, right?
Yeah, Google. Yeah. I mean, look, you're the machine learning guy. You have done some consulting on machine learning, and I always keep hearing this thing about having a huge data set is a big advantage. Is it really? I mean, is maybe Waymo's data set is maybe way more precise because they have way more better sensors. And maybe Tesla's dataset is just a bunch of shitty grayscale, low resolution camera images. And yeah, it's more terabytes, but is it like, do you really believe that argument that Tesla has an advantage because they have all that data? And this is an open question. I'm not leading anything. I'm just asking you.
I mean, for the approach Tesla is taking, which we kind of exaggerated some minutes ago, like they basically just put in all the imagery and try to get off. I mean, some control input, right? And
right.
I mean, it's not really what they do, but it's more to that, right? So just as you said, they're not. I mean, of course, they're doing some hybrid approach, obviously, but I think it's more to the side just putting in data and trying to fit the network compared to what Waymo does, which is really implementing rules and just using machine learning for really confined, defined
recognition tasks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, once you take the approach Tesla does, just your input space is just huge, and you have to cover every single edge case. And I mean, data's everything there, right? And of course, the more rule-based approach that Waymo does, it is less data intensive, but it's also harder. So it requires more capital, but less data. I think it really makes sense that both of those companies are taking the approaches they take. And I would agree that data is important, yes.
I don't know, because the thing also about just killing the problem with data in autonomous driving is that basically you say, okay, like I've seen every traffic light, I've seen every construction zone, I've seen everything. And that's only possible if your feature space is small enough that you can actually fill it with data. But if for me, it's not immediately obvious if maybe on the 99th percentile of strange things that can happen to you when you're doing driving, if maybe there are so many weird things, like, you know, like, I don't know, a boar jumping out in front of you while you're crossing under a waterfall and the sun is shining in your face. So,
yeah.
By the way, that's epic,
Yeah.
but hard to handle for a car. And is it really something you can kill with data, or maybe your feature space on the edges is so sparse that you have to have some rule-based things, or maybe, you know, just close your eyes and go straight and hope for the best, and maybe that also works.
I mean, I agree that this is not something you can learn, and I think this is not. I mean, obviously, Waymo isn't doing this, but Tesla isn't either. So, I mean, of course, they are trying to mix in some rule-based decisions in order to make the whole thing more generalizable, right? But still, even for this much simpler problem you're facing after you do this, I think still that data re is key there. But yeah, I mean, it's not like, I mean, it sometimes sounds like you have to have seen everything that happened, and then you can train a network to react everything that can happen. I'm not sure if that's the route, because I mean, then
that's the whole point of machine learning.
I mean,
the whole point of machine learning is that you can do interference, right? You take a scenario that you've seen here, and there's a similarity with another scenario there, and you can translate this knowledge to another area of your problems, and that's what a neural network does, basically.
Sure, but I think what I'm trying
to these symmetries.
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to say with your boar example, for example, you wouldn't try to train a network on learning how to react to a ball jumping in front of you, and I don't know, maybe an elk or a bear, but you train it to an obstacle on the street, and then you train another network to distinguish an obstacle from a moving car or a pedestrian, maybe, right? And
or a floating plastic bag from a floating
rock. So this is still something that Tesla has to do as well. I mean, it sometimes sounds like Tesla is just putting in data and trying to solve all these edge cases separately. I don't think that. I think they still have to put a lot of thought into how to break this problem down and make it easier to tackle.
Yeah, I just checked. I was researching this a couple of months ago. The disengagement rates of Waymo, how often they have to actually disengage the autonomous driving and take over, and it's not. I'm not exactly sure, but I think these are disengagements by safety drivers. So you have a safety driver in the seat, and they are going, of course, not just in Phoenix, Arizona, but they're going cross country all over the United States, and how often does somebody have to step in and take over from the algorithm? And I think the current numbers for 2018 or 19 are every 17,000 kilometers.
Okay, wow.
And that's not such a great number. I mean, it's quite a lot of kilometers, of course, if you drive them. like once in 3 weeks, you have to do something. But imagine every time there's an accident. Of course, it's not gonna be every time an accident. Of course, often the safety drivers maybe are. And maybe this may be 99% of the cases, right? That the safety drivers were actually just overly cautious and like, okay, this is not working out, and they took over. Maybe it was situations where the car was stuck and they had to take the car out of the stuckness. But I don't think they count that. I'm not sure. But I think 17,000 kilometers is still far away from where you want to be. I think once we are at 2 magnitudes better, so if you can have like disengagement every million kilometers, and you say, okay, every 1 million kilometers, your autonomous cars have an accident. That I think is a rate where now you can say, okay, well, they're not perfect, but they're so much better than a human driver.
Yeah.
You can take them. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole philosophical argument. It's like, okay, but if I make the mistake, I'm more okay with it than if an algorithm makes a mistake for me. I think this number also tells us that we're quite a bit away still from the place where we have really level 4 autonomy all over the country. I think what's happening in Phoenix, Arizona is that they really mapped out this thing. They really know their hood. They know every curb. and I think there's no rain, there's no snow, there is no water. It's basically a desert, and it's also a rich place and not many people walking. Not that it is being correlated to being rich, but there are not many people working, and it's a rich place, so the roads are very perfect. And I think we're still some advancements away in terms of algorithms from having a situation like Waymo Phoenix, Arizona rolled out in other cities of the United States. Mm-hmm. Even if you talk about calmer cities, I'm not talking about Boston, I'm talking about New York.
These interferences, is that like the driver taking over after the car told it that it's not sure about the situation, or is it really emergency takeover?
So it's not immediately clear, but it's called a disengagement. So you disengage the algorithm, and I think this for sure. I don't know. I think if a car pulls over to the side and tells the driver, "Hey, sorry, please take over," I don't think that's counted.
Okay, because that would be quite a good number, right?
No.
Then you would have like a level 4 autonomous driving in every 18,000 kilometers.
It's like, we just didn't notice.
Yeah.
Man, look at the data. It's actually perfect. No, but I think if it stops in the middle of the road, or if it just if just the guy's like, okay, so I have to brake now because there's a trailer standing orthogonal across the road and my algorithm didn't see it. These are disengagements, and they're still every 17,000 kilometers. And again, not all of these would have led to an accident. Not all of these were maybe necessary. So maybe give it a factor 10. But even then, I think we still need another factor 10. And it's for like a proper rollout in like multiple places other than just a university campus, Phoenix, Arizona, maybe 2-3 other cities in the United States. And so I think that's doable. It depends a bit. People are now talking about an AI winter already, that there's not much progress in AI anymore. So assuming that Waymo is already using all the latest AI technologies, then maybe there's going to be some roadblock there. Maybe they just can kill it with data. Maybe they just kill it by, I don't know, building better roads. But I think it's not for me. I'm not comfortable saying, okay, in 5 years, in 10 years, we will have this nationwide. And I would say 50-50. For me, there's a 50% chance we have it everywhere. And there's a 50% chance it just remains a research project. And then we are here in 2030, hopefully, and talking about the same thing again.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this AI winter thing?
Yeah.
That there's not much progress in AI?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And
what's your feeling?
I mean...
what's your progress?
I think what it really has to do with is that, what really... It's more the winter of the AI hype, right? So I think it was from the beginning, it was overhyped a lot what can be done with machine learning, and of course specifically with deep neural networks. And I think we're just seeing some kind of the conversation is getting back to normal a little bit. So I think some people who weren't so deep into the technical details, who just heard some buzzwords and got very excited, are now trying to understand what really the limitations are and where you can apply it and where you can't, and what it actually means to have a statistical model if you need 100% accuracy and all that. So I'm not sure. I think there's still a decent amount of progress, but there's been a huge hype, and I think I wonder if it has hurt like the progress on artificial intelligence in general that it has been so overhyped. Because it will
I
be
don't
tough.
think it has very. I think there's so much money went in, and the kind of people who hype this stuff, they are already moved on to the next thing. So
Yeah.
I think it, in the end it helped it because a lot of money went in.
Yeah.
And a lot of research is happening.
Yeah.
But do you think we need another breakthrough to get autonomous driving, like in, let's say, 10 cities in the United States? Or do you think it's just a matter of walking the walk, doing the mapping, getting the data, getting the permissions, getting the confidence, improving something here and there, and maybe adding another sensor here?
Mm.
Do you think it's gonna?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that the Waymo approach probably can work without another breakthrough. But I mean, as we already said, that I mean, it is really expensive. I mean,
yeah, but then basically, I think it's easier to just get the cost of producing a LiDAR down than to make an.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not only talking about LiDAR, but just development is more expensive probably because it really relies heavily on humanly designed features, and you probably have to map cities and all that. So it's basically something Google can do, but not so many other companies. And about the more like low-tech approach Tesla is doing. That's maybe called low-tech.
Camera in the driver's seat, put the guy on the wheel, and it turns left and right, and there's a thing on the gas pedal. And we only need one thing because we have one pedal driving. Go.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know enough about it to say that. I'm not sure.
I think autopilot is super weird in this uncanny valley right now, and I think what you said about safety and like being able to cross this valley from level 1, 2, 3 to level 4 safely without reducing safety, I think it's possible. I don't think Tesla is doing it right now. I think Tesla is just like throwing everything they have out and see what sticks. And you know what? I guess it's fine. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it can also move innovation forward. And there are, I don't know. I read something today, I don't know if it's true, like 3,000 people dying in traffic worldwide every day. That's a crazy number. I know in Germany we have like 2,000-3,000 a year traffic deaths.
Yeah, so it probably would make sense, yeah. I mean...
So, and then it scales 365 times the population of Germany, and other countries maybe are less safe, but also have less cars.
Which is kind of ironic, because in other countries you can't drive on the highway with 300 kilometers an hour. But
yeah, and some countries have fewer cars, and so it averages out. Yeah. Anyways, what I'm saying is there are so many people dying, and I think it's fine to take some chances and pretending to be like, oh yeah, any death is one death too many doing this transition to autonomous driving and much safer cars. It's like, no, come on, like there's 3,000, like the time we took here to speak, 50 people have died in traffic worldwide, more.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And don't get me wrong, like for example, what Uber did was completely reckless. When they had the safety driver not paying attention, that's not what I'm talking about, right? I also don't think that Tesla should call their assistant an autopilot if it's not autonomous, because people equate autopilot with, okay, it pilots for me.
Yeah.
And in a plane it's even correct, right? Because you don't have stuff appearing randomly in front of you. But I think it's fine to take some chances, and so I don't really hate on Tesla for being okay, fine, then we just go down this valley and maybe some people not pay attention and there are a few more accidents for a while, but at the end we come out and we are safer.
And I think, I mean...
I still wouldn't want to run this program like that, and I think they should change a lot of things, but I think at the end of the day that's an okay approach.
And I think Teslas are still pretty safe, right? So...
Yeah,
I mean,
as a car, maybe.
It's a question whether this has to do with autopilot or not, but I don't think that, like, crashing Tesla autopilot is really a huge safety concern.
Yeah, right, but I mean, there are also other people you crash into, right?
Yeah, sure, but I mean also like deaths of like I mean, people dying in accidents with Teslas
At the hands of
involved
a Tesla, okay.
are not. I mean, I think this number is actually lower than the average overall cars. I mean, of course, there are many factors playing into this.
You have to pay attention. Yeah, what kind of people buy
of
Teslas?
course,
How much do they drive the Teslas? How new are these Teslas?
Sure. But I mean, it's not like Teslas are the most dangerous thing on the roads nowadays.
Killing machines.
Yeah, this is really not the
You
case.
see a Tesla,
Yeah.
jump. Yeah,
And I also agree with
but
you, like this slow rollout. I mean, as I already said, I also think that if you do it right and you kind of in parallel roll out assistance that just, I mean, make sure that the driver is still paying attention and all that, it could actually be still beneficial. Because, for example, the example you gave with European cities now requiring deaf spot assistance and so on. I mean, this at least, I mean, in Berlin alone, I think that saves like 15 lives a year.
Yeah,
So-
I don't think they require dash spot assistance, by the way. I think they require autonomous braking, and I think they just require it to be built in, but they don't require it to be activated or something like that. I know that a lot of trucks actually they turn off this automatic braking assistant because they're like, yeah, but I want to tailgate the guy in front of me so closely, and it keeps braking, so this is annoying, and they just turn it off. Or
I'm not sure
so,
about
but
that. Okay.
so don't quote me on that. But yeah, I think what Tesla is doing is worth trying. But I think they're definitely taking a bit of a cowboy approach, and this can, in the end, it can hurt it. It can hurt autonomy, or it can move it forward.
Yeah.
And I think now it's impossible to say. But I know that there are cars. There are lots of situations that they don't handle correctly. They're passing very closely other cars. There was a problem until recently, where when you had like one lane standing on an exit ramp or something, and their car was like passing on the adjacent lane at full speed, at full highway speed. Like a human wouldn't do that, and they never coded this case, and they just ran it. And I think, so there are a lot of problems with that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, maybe let's move on a little bit and talk about the broader implications. Just assuming now that we're at a time in the future where we have I don't know, level 5 autonomy, or at least level 4 autonomy with a few caveats, like level 4 cars that interrupt you like every 2 days on your journeys to tell it how to manage an edge case. And I think it's quite interesting to think about what this would mean for our cities and like in general for our society. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
okay, so I think people will drive Waymo.
Way more.
Okay, sorry. Okay, this
Nice.
I don't know. I mean, I know that if today I knew that Google puts their self-driving cars in Berlin, everywhere, like the way they are today, with the kind of shitty mapping they have, not the kind of Phoenix, Arizona mapping, but the general mapping they have for I don't know, the whole United States, and they just put a car there, and all the cars get replaced with Waymo self-driving cars. I would actually go by bike more, because I would feel safer. I know these cars sometimes do stupid shit, but at least they're predictable, right? They don't turn on corners at full speed. They don't run the red lights,
Yeah.
mostly. And if they do, then they fix it for the next one, like
Yeah.
fool me once, shame on me, yeah. And they don't pass closely to scare you off. They don't, whatever. And personally, I know that if I knew biking to work was safe, I'll probably bike to work with an electric bike, because I'm lazy, but I would bike to work. I'm not lazy, but come on, I don't want to arrive to
That's
home
okay.
sweaty.
That's okay.
So I think there is this kind of counterintuitive effect where better autonomy in cars actually enables other traffic participants to participate in traffic again, not having to be afraid.
Yeah.
And I think there's even a critical mass where you have 50% of vehicles, for example, driving autonomously, already reducing the speed, the amount of speeding on the roads. And I've read some statistics I know I've read something sometimes at some point, and don't quote me on that, that are actually the automatic cruise control is already improving the flow on highways because people brake less aggressively. And so I think there is this impact where people will start biking more in cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually interesting.
But of course,
yeah, I mean, for me also, the reason why I don't bike in Berlin, except for like very specific routes to somewhere where I know that there's no large street in a way, is just that I'm afraid, right? And I mean, people are just. I mean, it's also probably a specifically German problem that people are just very aggressive with their cars. Yeah, but I mean, also in Stuttgart, it's just yeah. And so yeah, I mean, I could imagine that if the adoption rate is high enough, right? You're also like, even if you're the only guy still driving yourself, you're not that likely to be so aggressive, right? So I mean, much of the aggression in traffic is not. I mean, you don't auto-generate that, right? If you're driving alone in the night,
I don't know. I mean,
you're not driving like that. If
you're an asshole and you like speeding, you're gonna speed. But I think it's harder to speed if the people in front of you don't speed, the people behind you don't speed. It's harder to run a red light if nobody else does it. I think.
Yeah, and I don't think I really don't think that speeding is so much the problem. It's more the aggression.
You know? Yeah, it's like not looking when you turn the corner. Trying to cut off people who like cross the road while you have the right to turn, but you actually have to yield to them, but you don't care or you don't understand the traffic rules
and
things like that. Not stopping on the crossing.
So I think that this will really improve like the atmosphere in cities and also the number of people who dare to bike. And but also what I also think, and I mean you also touched on this, is that a higher adoption rate of autonomous cars will also mean a better traffic flow, and I think that this really plays a big role, and it could also kind of help with the problem of more densely populated cities that we have nowadays. So I mean, if you can do a commute that would take 2 hours today, just due to traffic jams in 1 hour, you're probably more likely to move a little bit farther from where you work, and this of course then makes cities less densely populated as they would be in the future without self-driving cars. So this is also something I would be looking forward to if that actually happens, that maybe cities are less crazily expensive.
True, but then there's also the other aspect that people will just drive more. Yeah, so you have a job in San Francisco Bay Area, and I don't know, you live somewhere in Portland, and you commute every night.
Yeah, maybe you do. But maybe that's necessary.
Say hi to your wife for an hour.
Yeah.
And I think people will just drive much more, and maybe it'll be. I'm sure people will go by train less because they will prefer driving more. They will go by plane less because they will prefer driving more, and they will all be running petrol cars if it happens fast enough. So I think the environmental impact, the impact on traffic in general, the impact on how much the roads are used, how many roads have to be built to accommodate for traffic will actually be negative. And I don't mean to discredit the benefit of living further outside the city and being able to commute to work. You know, that there's an economic benefit in that. But also there's this whole thing where you just have more traffic and more people driving. And yes, there is to some degree you can improve the efficiency, but when the street is full, it's full. And sometimes you have to yield and traffic jams are going to build up. And it's going to be a long time until you even have that kind of scenario where you have vehicle-to-vehicle communication. Because I think if autonomy rolls out, it has to be backwards compatible. So this whole vehicle-to-vehicle communication, 5G, edge computing stuff
AI
is pretty far out there.
Blockchain.
Both in terms of time and sense. And so I don't see much improvements to traffic flow. I think in the cities it will be nicer to bike. I think on the countryside people will just go by car even more. And no, the kids will go by car, so the buses will be empty.
Yeah.
and all people will go by cars, so you will probably a lot of public transport being shut down.
I mean,
or maybe this is gonna be the other way, or you have some autonomous taxis that take you. But I don't know. It's hard to say. We could go back to the whole suburb trend, especially now when cities becoming more crowded. Maybe more problems in cities. People want to move back to the countryside, so maybe the suburb becomes a trend again, where all the rich people no longer live downtown, but they live 20 kilometers out. Out of the city.
Yeah, I mean, I would welcome that future, because I think what really comes down to now is when you're looking for an apartment in a major city, you're basically trading your time with the rent you pay, and this is, of course, I mean, yeah, you can either decide to live a little bit more outside the city and pay less rent, but then you spend like 3 hours commuting every day, or you live a little bit more central and you don't have to. So, I mean, yeah, I would look forward to this problem getting a little bit less severe, and of course, yeah, at the same time, I would expect the living standard in the inner city to rise even more, because it's less dangerous to bike, as you say, and also less dangerous to just walk around, and it just feels better. And I think I wouldn't care so much about there being more traffic if it's safe and if it's efficient.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as long as cars burn petrol and contribute to climate change, as long as you have to.
But do you really think that this will that the transition to electric cars or other means of green transportation will be slower than the transition to level 4 autonomous driving? I don't think so.
We'll tell you next week. Seriously, that's a topic for another podcast. But I don't know. I think electric cars are in a similar spot as self-driving cars, where it can go either way. And you can look back in 10 years and be like, oh yeah, that was a fun time when everybody thought everybody would go electric. And maybe some of it sticks, maybe we'll get hybrid. Or maybe we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, that was the revolution.
Well,
so save your commentary. Yeah. We'll come back to that. Keep that energy. But even if you look at electric cars, and I rented an electric car 3 days ago, and I was like, oh, this is so great. I love driving cars. I really enjoy driving, and it's so nice to not have to feel guilty about it, and I can take the longer route through the highway because it's more fun, and I don't have to feel so bad about it. I think electric cars will not solve all problems of cars, right? I mean, electric autonomous cars will solve 2 problems, pollution and danger, but they still will not solve the problem of usage of space. I mean, yes, in terms of parking lots, maybe, but in terms of road usage, in terms of road space, they won't use it. And I think our cities in our countryside, but especially our cities, really suffer from being cut through by huge roads, places where people could sit and I don't know, have a drink together or have a plaza. We have roads, and of course you can build tunnels, but this is not going to happen in 10 years. It's not going to happen in 15 years. So I think having more traffic for me actually is a worry that comes with autonomous driving. I don't think we can stop that. I would still be willing to trade more traffic for more safety. So if I can get safety in the city, I would accept having more traffic. Or if I can get safety in general, we can save thousands of lives every day. Okay, fine. That's it. And then we have to see if we can go electric or if we have to go with, I don't know, synthetic fuels. But that's a topic for another podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. But I'm not so sure of the traffic. I mean, what has to happen until the traffic really feels like more traffic, right? So, I mean, our roads are not full by any means. They're just inefficiently used. And also, like in large cities where you have traffic jams, it's not really that you don't have the roads to accommodate all the cars if they would really move efficiently. So I think there's at least a factor 2 or 3 in there.
Really? I think maybe it's 0.2. 20% improvement
No.
possibility, because you still have to stop traffic for people crossing the roads. You still have to lead for other lanes of traffic going. You still have to put all the cars in behind each other. There still has to be some distance between the cars.
You don't have to
because-
yield to other cars. You can just, I mean, if you really have communicating cars or also some other means of a I don't know, commonly adopted protocol, even without communication,
Yeah.
it could work. That you can just, I don't know, have two lanes merging into each other without anybody slowing down or anybody waiting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't think
Yeah.
that our roads are full. And
You have to still yield to pedestrians.
sure, yeah.
Okay, sorry, finish your sentence and then I...
No, but yeah. I was finished,
I mean-
so I agree that you still have to yield to pedestrians, but
Okay, so maybe we'll get better after some time, after everything is fully autonomous and we have inter-vehicle communication. But for this intermediate time where some people are driving autonomously, others don't, and some people are already using the autonomous cars to live further from the city and commute more, there will be more traffic
Yeah.
and it will take more.
this would be terrible, I agree.
And also cars make noise, even when they don't have an engine. Yeah, if a car is running 50 kilometers an hour, most of the noise that you have is actually the tire
Yeah.
noise. So you have electric cars are still loud, and in the cities, they still actually create pollution through the tires. The rubber is creating smoke. I think it's a bit exaggerated, right? I really like electric cars, and I think they're a huge solution to a huge problem. But I think having 2 times more cars in the city, even if they're electric, is not gonna be pretty.